Hello and welcome to Shelved episode 12. I am your host, Jeremy Meyer. Alright, now this is a really fun episode for you guys today. This is a script that I knew it existed for a long time, but hadn't even thought about looking for it, and it's one that just kind of came to me. I was out there searching for scripts on some social media platforms, as I do every now and then, and somebody sent this one to me, and it was very unexpected, and I had a feeling it was going to be good. It was going to be a fun read because it's based on a story that I really enjoy, and it's we talk about this a lot in the episode, but I can never say his name right. Guillermo Del Toro. It's his script, and it's At the Mountains of Madness, based on the H.P. Lovecraft story. And it's one of my favorite stories. H.P. Lovecraft, obviously a master of horror, and has such an interesting story. And this was a fascinating read, and I have to say, this is my favorite script that we've read for the episode, or for the show. I really enjoyed it. Guillermo really paints a picture on the page, and it was just so enjoyable. Me and my co-host for this episode, Eric Ziselman, who you should know by now, we both had a lot of fun reading the script. It was easily one of our favorites. It's my favorite I've read for the show, and it's just so entertaining. I highly recommend, even if you listen to the episode first, go to our Tumblr, www.shelvedfilmpodcast.tumblr.com, download this script and read it. It's so good. We try to cover everything, but there's a lot of stuff in the writing, and just like the interactions of characters in the dialogue is so worth reading. It's the best thing I've read in a while, book, script included. And I just highly recommend checking it out. So we had a lot of fun with this episode. So before we get into the episode, I do want to say that I'm kicking around the idea for the mini episodes of maybe doing like just some little fun movie discussions, like some top 10 lists and stuff like that. So I was thinking, if you have some top 10 lists that you'd want to hear me cover, like, oh, what are my 10 favorite movies or 10 favorite TV shows, like any kind of movie-related list that you can think of, top 10 canceled TV shows, blah, 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 send them to my email, shelvedfilmpodcast at gmail.com. I almost said the Tumblr. Because I just think that'd be fun. If you want to get to know me a little more, and I'm kind of putting it in your hands, you can be interactive. And if you want to leave your name or information, or if you want to promote something, include it in the email. So you guys can be interactive with the show and just have a little more fun with it. All right, so we're just going to jump in today's episode 12, Guillermo Del Toro's At the Mountains of Madness. I really had fun talking about this one, so I really hope you guys enjoy it.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Really?
Yeah.
It sounds really cool. Like I watched the trailer and I read the Wikipedia, and I'm like, man, I should watch this.
I'll tell you, man. The very start of it feels a lot like fucking Mountain of Madness.
Really?
Yeah, because he's in a fucking in a mental institution.
Yeah.
And then he starts telling it back to some guy.
Yeah.
And then it goes flashbacks.
I was reading on it, and it's basically said that movie's kind of like John Carpenter's love letter to H.P. Lovecraft.
Okay.
Because a lot of Lovecraft stories, the way they're done is they are like, this is someone's journal or someone's notes and someone's blah blah blah.
Yeah, it's
You can adjust the mic with this thing if you need to.
Yeah, it's been very cool so far. So I'm very happy to be checking it out.
Yeah, there's another one you should check out called From Beyond.
Okay.
It's actually based on a Lovecraft short story.
Mm-hmm. Which one?
I can't remember the name of it. Okay. If you look up the Wikipedia page, it tells you exactly which story it's from. Because he had I don't know how much you know about H.P. Lovecraft, if anything.
A little bit. I just, I know that we're We're not
Yeah,
live
it's
right
rolling.
now.
It's rolling.
Oh, it's rolling.
Yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
can
Well,
edit this.
hey, everybody.
I can edit this at any point.
All right. Hey. Yeah. No, I know. I know a little bit about Lovecraft and the lore that he's created surrounding,
Yeah.
Cthulhu, and I mean, I don't know too much about his personal upbringing, but beyond what he's written.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about him, but I definitely know a little bit. I mean, I was looking up some this morning, but From Beyond is based on the short story of the same name. So
there you go. Something to definitely check out, then.
yeah. But it's a really cool 80s movie. There's a website, Cinemassacre. It's where the Angry Video Game Nerd is from. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
No.
But he does these series of videos where he fucking plays old games and reviews them, but like yells and swears and shit.
Okay.
But he does every Halloween. He does Monster Madness, where every day in October he reviews another horror movie.
Right.
And each year it's kind of themed a little different. And one year he did 80s-a-thon or whatever. So we just reviewed a bunch of 80s movies, and one of them was From Beyond. And I'd recommend just checking out his review of it. It's just like this crazy, like, I would compare it to John Carpenter's The Thing with like the monster creature effects. It's kind of similar, but it's based on a Lovecraft story.
Yeah,
and it sounds super crazy.
The Lovecraft definitely feels a lot like something John Carpenter would jump into. So it's
a lot of monsters, and like a lot of his themes are like forbidden knowledge and ancient aliens and stuff. Like
yeah,
you could probably
I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly, and it's why I've always been drawn to, especially the one we're going to be talking about today in particular. I love his stuff. It's hard to read, like if you actually want to read it, because these are all from like the 20s and from before. I've
read a little bit, and the diction that he uses is it'd be nice. It's good to keep a thesaurus or a dictionary next to you.
I would attribute it to just like reading like J.R.R. Tolkien. It's the same thing. Like I tried reading those Lord of the Rings books, and it's pretty rough. Like
is it boring? I've never gotten into those.
It's really boring. Like the first one in particular, the first like 2 chapters is just like, here's multiple generational history of the Baggins family.
Okay.
And it's just, there's a lot of that. Like once you meet a new character, it's like, oh, why don't we tell you about their family lineage? And it's like reading a dictionary in the middle of a story.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's pretty dry. I mean, I read The Hobbit, and I remember liking The Hobbit, but even at the time, I read that in like 8th grade.
Yeah, I never, I don't know. I mean, usually when you get into that kind of stuff, it's the people around you that that will kind of push you to that kind of stuff. But
yeah, and if I will say, having seen the movies, it's easier.
Yeah,
but it's because the first book, there's a lot of stuff in that book that's not in the movies. So like a good chunk of the beginning, it's really slow and it's hard to get through. So I never even finished the first book.
Right.
It's just so hard to get through.
My buddy, he definitely got into that, but he told me that he read like almost like a prequel. It's called like the Cimarron.
Yeah, it's basically like his dictionary or his encyclopedia of Middle Earth.
Just gods and all kinds of deities and stuff like that. So it's always fun to get into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for me, it's like I like to read the Wikipedia pages because they're explaining it in a way I can understand.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of the same thing with H.P. Lovecraft. I love reading about all of his stories, but when you actually sit down and read them, it becomes kind of a task.
It is. It's a chore sitting there trying to just get through there and really throw yourself into the book. So I know what you mean.
One thing interesting to note, though, is that he didn't, like, as he's held up there as like one of these great writers of our time and everything, he didn't become famous until after he died. Like, he was a very shy dude.
Yeah.
And didn't, like, what's the word I'm looking at? Not like publicize, promote himself. He was too shy to promote himself.
Right.
So all of his work was basically kind of put out there after he died. So he died poor.
Yeah. No, I do recall reading up a little bit about that and how I think he was he had a couple mental illnesses that kind of
he was just kind of a reclusive guy
that kept him inside. So
and it very much shows in his writing.
Yeah.
And then, like with Cthulhu stuff in particular, like because Cthulhu is always in his stories talking about living in the ocean, and I guess that I was listening to this YouTube guy today. He does this explaining the Cthulhu mythos basically, and he does a bunch of series of videos on different aspects of the Cthulhu mythos. And he was talking about that Cthulhu himself basically came from his own fear of water, of the ocean. And that's why he, lives in the ocean. And
it's a very cool, I guess, lore surrounding the entire story and the script. So, if you know a little bit about Cthulhu and that kind of stuff, you're going to be drawn a lot more into the script, and you're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, At the Mountains of Madness, which is the script we're talking about today, is easily my favorite H.P. Lovecraft story, just the whole idea of it. And when I heard about this script a long time ago, because it was kicked around a while ago, and when Prometheus came out, it was in the news a little more, because that was around the time that Guillermo Del Toro, however the fuck you say his name, I always get corrected on the pronunciation of his name. Guillermo Del Toro.
There we go.
I'm probably going to say it wrong 16 times in the middle
you said correction. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, no, that's perfect, though. Guillermo Del Toro,
yep.
he came out after Prometheus came out and was basically like, yeah, I don't think we're going to make the movie because Prometheus was pretty similar to the movie. And we were talking about this before you were like very deep into the script.
Yep.
Now that you finished it, do you see the similarities?
I do. There are parts that there are glaring parts that definitely that I see Prometheus took from Mountains of Madness, because clearly that came out first. I mean,
the book did,
of
but
course.
I will say, having read the description of the book, the scene in particular, Guillermo Del Toro said that there was one scene in particular that was almost identical. And I'm assuming it's the scene where the guy, what's his name? He basically gets turned into a monster and he comes back and starts killing the crew. Yeah. Just like the scene in Prometheus where the dude gets killed, like the guys in the cave get killed and he gets the black goo on him, and then he comes back and starts just
he's like
everybody.
Upside down. He looks like a spider, basically.
Yeah, and to me that was the scene that when I read it, I was like, oh, this has to be what he was talking about.
Okay, all right. Because the whole time I was reading it, I was, in my mind, I'm thinking about Prometheus, the same scene that occurred in the first Alien, where they go in, I guess they basically go into this cave and they see like this fossilized...
into the ship,
the remains of this man there. And honestly, I didn't pick up on, a guy that was possessed, for lack of a better word, attacking his own crew member. I didn't really pick up on that, seeing as how, that kind of stuff has happened in movies all the time.
Yeah, but Gunnarsson, that was the guy's name.
Right. I was always thinking that how it was similar to Prometheus was when they went down into the city and they actually saw the 100-foot statue of Cthulhu. I thought that kind of, I know it's not exactly the same.
Of the chamber that they open in Prometheus. And
right.
There's the face statue on there. And
exactly. That's what it kind of felt like to me. So
and even the whole general tone or plot of Prometheus is they're going to this other planet to find possibly the things that created us.
Right.
And it's pretty much exactly the plot of it. The only difference is in Prometheus, they know what they're looking for.
Right.
This is something they stumble upon.
Yeah, it's just they're going on an expedition to Antarctica.
Yeah.
And they think that, who knows what we'll find up there in the ice buried, which is, it's always fun.
Yeah. Because it starts where we get introduced to our two main characters, which is the Professor Lake and what's his name?
Dyer? Yeah. Dyer.
Who's a geologist. And basically they're planning this expedition to Antarctica because they found a fossil of some crazy looking creature.
So you don't know what the hell it is. I believe it's cut in half, or it was like
it's
down
like
the middle.
It's like a stone slab that's cut in half, and on half of imprint is this creature.
Right.
And so that's where they're going. But I guess we could start from the very beginning. Is we have the boat, because the way it wraps around in the end is one of my favorite things in the script to talk about. So I have to talk about the beginning.
Sure.
So the boat is found drifting in the ocean, and it's this giant ship. I think it's the Arkham.
Yes.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Because there's two ships. There's the Arkham and another one.
Miskatonic.
Yeah, the Miskatonic. So the Arkham, it's drifting in the ocean. It's totally wrecked and just
it's like a ghost
derelict.
ship out there. Yeah.
And they board it, and they find this crazy guy just locked in one of the rooms who attacks these sailors. And then we cut to a mental institution where they're kind of holding this guy, and then he starts to tell his story, which the guy they're holding is Dyer. Then we kind of get our opening transition. And one thing that is nice about this script is it's not as hard to read as a Lovecraft story. Guillermo, God, I always want to say Guillermo.
Do you want to throw in an acronym? Guillermo Del GDT?
I need to get his name. I need to get his name right.
Right,
Guillermo.
go for it.
I'm going to stumble across this.
Guillermo Del Toro.
Until it's just fucking ingrained in my head.
I hear you, buddy.
So we get the early hintings of like how crazy this guy is. He has dreams about a man.
Right.
Who... I guess we'll talk about it later, but to me that feels unresolved by the end of this, which in the book, it's also unresolved. So, I mean, I don't know if you read anything about the book before?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll get there when we get to the end.
I'm strictly script.
Yeah. Which the script is a very faithful adaptation, but it adds a lot of things. Like, a lot of things are implied in the book. Because the book is, again, H.P. Lovecraft, one of the things he does is everything is always told from someone's point of view, either through an interview, a journal, blah, like think World War Z, basically.
Gotcha.
So Dyer has a wife, Anne, and she's pregnant.
Right.
And then, like, we kind of get this little drama of Lake is basically convincing Dyer to go with him on this expedition, but he's not going to go because his wife is pregnant, and that's when he gives
him the choice.
Yeah, he gives him the choice, but he shows him the fossil.
Exactly,
and
right.
That basically only leaves
He tickles his
choice.
funny bone a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, come on, you can't look at this thing and be like, I'm not going to go.
What the fuck is that?
One thing I was expecting, because like the way the script starts with them interviewing Dyer in the mental institution, I thought, and I guess this kind of relates back to the last script we talked about, I thought it was going to bounce back and forth a lot. Like,
you're right. I was definitely waiting for flashbacks to bring you back to our main character who's fucking sitting in a mental institution.
Yeah, but it really only happens once, like towards the end. It reminds me of Titanic. Like, she's telling the story. There's a long chunk of that movie where we don't flash back to like, the present, and then you do like right before the ship starts to sink.
Yeah, that's totally cool with me. I have no problem with how they do it.
Yeah, and I like that. I was expecting more, and I was surprised a lot by this script. Because, as I said, this was one I was anticipating for a long time, and was super bummed when it got I don't want to say canceled, because I guess he's still trying to make it. Right. But from the most recent quote I found is he's going to give it one more shot, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And that's kind of.
Let me tell you, I'd love to see this movie made because just reading script, I haven't read that many scripts, but holy shit, the imagery that is on these pages is fascinating. I mean, it blows my mind how much detail Guillermo and whoever, I know it wasn't just by himself, but someone else wrote it with him.
One other guy. I'll find that name while you're talking.
Right. I mean, the things that they are talking about and the way it is written down, you're basically reading a novel that is very simplistic to read because it's in the format of a script.
Yeah.
I've never had so much fun reading a script.
Matthew Robbins was the other
Matthew
guy.
Robbins. I'm sure he's incredible as well. Same with Guillermo. So, like I said, I haven't read that many scripts, but this one is a lot of just fun to read because, like I said, I mean, the imagery, it's just tough to picture what both writers are trying to convey. It's crazy. I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah. I will say this is my favorite script I've read for the show so far.
Yep.
It was one I was really anticipating to read. Like, this one just came to me. I was kind of like out there searching for scripts, and I go to some social media networks, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for stuff. Does anybody have anything? And somebody sent this one to me. I didn't even know this one was out there, so I was pretty fucking excited.
A fan?
Not a fan, just like it was
on. You might be a fan.
It was on a Reddit thread.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, they have a screenwriting page. I go there every now and then, and I just kind of pluck people for scripts.
Yeah.
Because they've managed to give me some of this crazy shit that I have just sitting in the backlog, like waiting to pull out.
Thank you, anonymous, person.
Anyone. And I do have a couple friends that send me some stuff.
Cool. All right.
Fan, if you will. But yeah, I forgot what I was saying. But I was so excited to read this, and like as I was reading it, I was surprised at how surprised I was getting.
Yeah,
because I know the story. I've read about it many times, and it was just blowing me away. Like you said, the way he would describe a scene, like. To me, horror is a really hard thing to get right. I love horror movies.
Right.
But it's really hard for me to find one to be like, I love this movie and what it does. And for me, horror, I always like things that have like a deep mythology. And obviously something like H.P. Lovecraft is riddled with deep mythology.
Right.
Or something that has like a dark story. Because like an example is I love the Evil Dead remake.
Yeah.
I think that movie is... For people who shit on remakes and stuff, that movie is highly underrated. It's fantastic.
I really enjoyed that movie as well.
The tone and just the way they did it. And that's what I pictured, like that kind of thing was what I pictured reading this.
Sure.
Is like a scene jumping ahead a little bit when people like first start encountering monsters. So like the first monster that really starts attacking anybody is this thing called the Shoggoth or the Shoggoth, I think it's pronounced, which is basically just this amorphous blob thing that takes on forms.
Right.
And it lures this dog into the mist, and then this guy is looking for the dog, and you see it start coming out of the mist, and he describes it's only the front half of the dog trailing its entrails, which for one, really brave to kill a dog in a movie. That's the one thing in a movie where you're just like, oh, not the dog.
Well, also, what year is it right now?
It's in the 30s.
It's in the 30s. All right, so I know that, putting it out there right now, sure, dog killing, not a great thing, but let's the 30s, I don't think they gave a shit about the dogs back then.
No. Well, I mean the script
of
wasn't
course,
in the 30s. But,
right.
No, but like that's what they get a movie. You're just like, oh no, they can't kill the dog. Like in Independence Day is always my favorite example of a dog surviving, where everything's blowing up, but the dog makes that heroic
dog jumps
jump,
it,
and it's great. But yeah, it's really crazy. Just the horrific scenes he describes, like even just reading them on the page, sound horrific, and they don't sound cheesy. I mean, there's one that sounds a little cheesy. We'll get there.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it's really good the way the horror elements are laid out in the script.
Yeah,
and that was really surprising.
I know that there is a lot of suspense to what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But I do feel like a huge part of this movie is gonna end up being like gore, basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much reminiscent of The Thing.
Absolutely. Again, describing it's almost indescribable. The monsters with tentacles and spider legs and fucking starfish heads.
As we were reading this, I told you to just go Google the image.
I had to Google it because I couldn't contemplate I couldn't imagine what Lovecraft is even talking about.
So I read the book up to the point where they introduced the monsters, which are the ancient ones, which are the really crazy, hard to describe ones.
Yeah.
And it's like they look like a cucumber with like tentacles for feet and wings and tentacles sprouting out the side and like a starfish for a head.
Right.
But like trying to read that in the book was like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
It's the same thing when I'm sitting here reading the script and I'm trying to visualize it on a movie screen.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, it could come out extremely campy and kind of almost laughable.
Yeah,
but
it's kind of weird that as good as the mythology that Lovecraft has created, he created some really wacky looking monsters.
Yeah, I think it had to do with his time, in the turn of the century, basically.
Yeah,
and the man had an incredible imagination, and he's also terrified of the ocean, you said.
Yes.
So he's bringing together octopuses, tentacles, starfish head, anything that really
very aquatic.
Gives him
vegetative.
Gives him the heebie-jeebies. He's going to throw it in his book.
And it definitely, like, you look at the pictures of these things, and it sounds like the Shoggoth. That's easy to imagine, just a fucking blob that takes the form of things.
Right.
But yeah, like the Elder Things and even Cthulhu himself, there's tons of pictures. Like, I'm glad there's people out there smarter than me that can pick apart these descriptions and draw an artist rendition of it.
I mean, I'm looking at one here, and I couldn't describe this to you. No. I mean, if you want to, that's the Shoggoth. Yeah, that's the Shoggoth.
I mean, yeah, it's got like 9,000 eyes. It's just like a purple blob. It's 2 legs,
tentacles coming out of its back.
But like even in the script, when the Shoggoth appears, it's like he's absorbing people, and people are like coming out of him,
right? And speaking,
which is
faces
awesome.
Appear.
Like, there were so many scenes that like I want this to be a movie so fucking bad just because I want to see these scenes. Because like when I mean, we're kind of jumping all over the place,
right?
But,
well,
I mean, the story's pretty simple, and like we said, it's very similar to Prometheus.
Right.
They go to Antarctica, they're doing some digging, and they stumble across some really bad shit. It's kind of like your basic story,
right?
The Mountains of Madness part comes in a little later, but yeah, it's like I keep fucking losing my train of thought here. When he's talking to him, like those are some of my favorite scenes in the script. Like Lake, he eventually gets absorbed by this Shoggoth, and basically they can take the form of anything they seem to touch or absorb, and they can also multiply because there's like a scene later on where because they're harmed by like salt,
the salt water is what kills them.
Yeah, so they have them like is the Shoggoths or the Elder Things that are in the
In the
like the sarcophaguses underwater.
I think it's the elder things or the old ones.
Yeah. So does water affect them as well?
No, I don't think so because they were in like those.
Right?
I think the water affects everyone, but they were like in those sarcophaguses.
Yeah.
And then when they crack them open, the fucking green goo starts flying out.
Yeah, I think they said there's like minerals and stuff in the water that keeps them in like a hibernating state.
Right.
And they're okay. We're kind of all over the place. But yeah, I mean the beginning of the script, it's a little slow. It's definitely building up,
right?
Because I know the story, so I'm like, I just want them to get to the city. That's what I'm looking for. And because the whole thing is they go there and they do this interesting thing, which I don't think is in the book, but the time dilation stuff. So they get to Antarctica and it's basically they're stuck in a fog, and that fog ends up causing them to wreck. And then they set up a camp, and as they're setting up a camp is when they find these sarcophaguses. So the ice on the ship, I love the way they describe this. They're trying to melt the ice off the ship, but it's like almost growing back.
Right.
And then later we find out it's because there's like a time dilation going on, that time just seems to be moving very quickly, and they don't know it themselves, but like there's good examples of like, oh, the plane goes flying and it's only flying for like 30 minutes, but all of a sudden it's out of fuel.
Right. They look at their watches. Watches are all stopped exactly at the same time. And, no one knows what to do with themselves in this situation. There's a lot of, these are all scientists on board.
Yeah. And once they get there, it's just like a fucking cluster.
Yeah. They've never come across any fucking time paradoxes and things that are stopping. They tried to think of it as issues with the Earth's magnetic field that would be causing this.
Yeah.
But, clearly it's not the Earth's magnetic field.
Yeah. So they set up their base camp, and then they have a guy who's like, he basically goes under the water to kind of check out the hull of the ship.
Right.
And that's where we find these.
Was that Larson?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where we find these sarcophaguses that are under the water.
Right.
And they pull them out and they crack them open, and they find the creatures that they have the fossil of, which
right.
are the elder things, which are crazy cucumber monsters that we've been describing.
Yeah.
And that's a really fucking cool idea. Like, and they basically describe later that they're under there to preserve them, like, because there was a war between the elder ones and the Shoggoths were basically their slaves. Like, we find all this out later, but the Shoggoths monsters were their slaves, and they started to uprise, and so these elder things that were still alive basically hid under the water, and these sarcophaguses were keeping them in hibernation, keeping them alive. But yeah, this is where shit starts just to kind of go bad. So this is where we get the scene with the dog. Right. And we find the penguins. What did you think of the whole penguin thing? Did you pick up on what it was? I don't remember if they say it in the script what they were used for, but did you? No,
I don't think I picked up on it. I was the description, basically they say that these are 8 foot tall penguins, albino, blind, that have cataracts in their eyes. Yeah. And so, I'm just picturing this glossy, there. Right. And they're just, first of all, fucking 8 foot penguin.
That sounds so crazy.
That is so big. I'm just trying to.
Yeah. I'm 5'10".
I'm 5'5" over here, and I'm trying to just picture a penguin that huge. Yeah.
It'd be like that stack of boxes right next to us. I don't know if we can see this, but
well, of course not. But it's fucking, it's terrifying to think of it probably dwarfs an ostrich.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been next to an ostrich. Ostriches are probably 6'5". Okay, maybe. I'm sure there's bigger ones.
No, of course, yeah. But no, I didn't really pick up on what the purpose of the penguins were.
So basically they're livestock. They're food for the elder things.
Got it.
So they were basically created to just kind of be there. That's why they're blind.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And how they talk about how they all stare in the same direction and they're basically just drawn to stuff. Yeah, they're basically kept there as livestock.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I love how they talk about how they're killing them for food and how they just smell terrible. And he just is throwing up at the idea of eating them.
Yeah, I remember that part. That's that was pretty good when they. Again, we're jumping ahead, but when he jumps into the ice cave, and Larson tells Dyer to keep his mouth closed because the 8 foot penguin shows up behind him and he screams like a girl.
Who else wouldn't?
I'd fucking scream like that. But
they sound creepy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They sound totally harmless, but just the idea of seeing something like that would be very unsettling.
Wake up in the middle of the night, that fucker is at the foot of my bed. I mean, yeah, he's harmless, but this is no fucking joke.
Yeah. So Gunnarsson basically, he's the one who's out hunting. Mm-hmm. He basically becomes the main antagonist of the story.
Right.
Because he becomes an alien.
Right, and he starts multiplying.
Yeah. So yeah, they're out hunting the penguins, and that's when we get this dog scene, which is like literally, you came and talked to me about it. I'm like, man, that was really horrific. Like, it painted such a picture in my brain, and I've never seen anything like that in a movie. It sounded a little ridiculous because I can't imagine a dog, because the way he described it, almost like it was walking like normal, but it's like if a dog is only half, he's gonna be dragging pretty hard.
Yeah, continue. I mean, it's kind of fucked up, but go on.
But yeah, we get a little in Larson. So wait, which one? Gunnarsson. Yeah, Gunnarsson is the one who becomes the monster. So he's out hunting with Larson, and Larson is the one who escapes.
Right, he's the one that jumps into the water to after something kind of.
I was like, wouldn't he freeze to death?
100%. I said the same thing. These guys are in the fucking Arctic right now. The second he hops in the water, he's fucked.
So Gunnarsson, he gets killed and basically turned into a Shogun.
Right,
and. Yeah, he goes chasing after Larson. Larson shoots a hole into the ice with a shotgun, which I'm sure the ice in Antarctica is a little too thick for that. And he dives in. Immediately I was like, oh, well, he's dead. And
and they said that he fucking just fell down like a rock into the darkness. I'm like, there goes Larson.
He ends up showing up later just fine.
Of course.
Yeah, I'm like, this dude would have had a hypothermia in seconds. A little suspension of I mean, we're reading a script full of gods and monsters, so it's
spider monsters. Yeah,
suspension of disbelief is pretty easy.
Yeah, that's where the CG comes in.
Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely a couple moments of like, I don't know if anybody would survive that. Did you catch the mention multiple times of the Necronomicon? Yeah,
that was pretty cool. Just to have that jump in there, lore from a different. I don't know if it is Lovecraft.
Lovecraft wrote a story called the Necronomicon.
Wow, and there you go.
It's basically as it is described in this. It's the history and information on some of these creatures, and like Cthulhu and stuff like that.
And a lot of the scientists were basically scoffing.
It's basically like in the lore of the guy. It was written by a dude, and everybody just assumes that he was crazy and a whack job, and it's all fake. And even Professor Lake, who's the one who ends up taking it, even he kind of scoffs at it as well. But then once they start to encounter things, he's like, "Look, what other fucking explanation would you have?
We're gonna need this fucking book."
Yeah, like if this thing even has any idea of what's going on.
Now, does it feel like the same kind of Necronomicon from Evil Dead?
I don't think so. I mean, to me,
completely different one.
Yeah, to me it does. Okay, because to me it just seems like a book written by a person, whereas the Necronomicon in Evil Dead is basically implied to be a book by demons.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like I don't know much about that story, but like where this guy got this information and stuff. Like that.
Right.
But I don't know. Maybe it's just this guy got this information somewhere and wrote this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mythological book, it's jumped into different movies, so.
And as I said before, it's a running theme in the Lovecraft stories is like forbidden knowledge.
Of course, yeah.
Just like all of this kind of it's always about a story about a guy who is somehow learning all this stuff. Like this story is about Dyer and encountering this ancient civilization, or this story is about the guy who wrote this Necronomicon, and there's stuff like that all over H.P. Lovecraft's work. And the Cthulhu mythos is kind of like how we have an expanded universe in movies now. It's like the Marvel movies of horror stories. It all connects together. And it's nice to see that there's a lot of things thrown in this script, just like there would be like in those movies. Like, hey, we're going to reference the Necronomicon. Like, I love stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's always fun to get other stories thrown into the script. So yeah, I was definitely having a good time when I read that.
Yeah. So one of my favorite parts of the At the Mountains of Madness story is the idea of the city. And to me, that was the point I was like building up to for this whole script. I'm like, when do they get to the city? Is it going to be the same as the book and stuff like that? Because I didn't get this far in the book, but from what I read on Wikipedia, it's basically they get there and they're exploring and they don't really seem to encounter anything until they're leaving. And in this, it's like they get there and shit kind of just starts attacking them. Like a Shoggoth or whatever they play a much bigger role in this script than they ever did in the story.
Definitely.
In the script, there are multiple Shoggoths that attack them at different places, different times. Yeah. In the story, there's just one that chases them at the end, and I don't think it actually kills anybody.
Well, it's a horror movie, so you're going to need a little bit more suspense than one.
And there's a lot of deaths in this.
Yeah.
Because
everybody fucking dies.
So basically, two teams like kind of separate. So Dyer was gonna go with them to the city because they see they're at this mountain range, and it's the Mountains of Madness, and they see that what looks like buildings like cresting over the top of this mountain range. So they take these two planes and they fly up there, and one of them crashes, the other one lands. And I think did you mention something about how you felt about the plane crash at one point?
I was blown away that anyone is. First of all, I don't know how these guys are taking off. On an ice covered.
I mean, I think Antarctica's it's got a lot of flat areas just because it is ice. I think it's just implied that they're just using the flat ice.
Well, then beyond that, I don't.
These are smaller like single engine.
Right?
Planes.
No, of course, yeah, that I understand. But what were you going on?
I do like how the crash is described as being pretty horrific, and it's like, it just sounds like all those people are dead because like the plane flips and like the top of it smashes into something.
Yeah, I remember now.
And like I think only one person dies in the crash.
Right, they just get up, wipe themselves off, brush some snow off, and they just make way for the city.
Well, they basically just make camp right there, and then it's like, then they wake up like, we just got to go back. Like we got here, but now we got to go back.
Right,
and it's like, why'd you go all the way up there if you're not even going to check it out? But obviously they only have one plane now, so they can't take everybody back at once.
Right. And then they try to go back. They drew straws to see who was going to go back. There was
and Lake was originally going to go back, but he elects to stay because there's these two brothers and they don't want to be separated. So he's like, "Yeah, you can take mine." And the dude's like, "Look, I know you want to stay." And then
everything about it just kind of feels like The Thing. Just how every character is a male. In the movie, and which I would assume would change if the movie was made.
There's the one female character who dies, which is his wife. Which
that's why.
That's why he doesn't go.
My apologies. Yeah.
Oh no, that's fine. That's why Lake or Dyer, doesn't go with up to the city because Lake invites him. But he's like, and this just seemed like really poor timing on his part. He's like, "Hey, look, I got a telegram earlier. Why don't you go check that out before we go on?" This thing?
Right.
If you wanted the guy to help you, why would you tell him right there and then?
Yeah, that's your info now. You could do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. So he tells him about this telegram he received, which is that his wife and child both died during childbirth, which is the most depressing thing.
It's pretty rough.
The most depressing
now I'm stuck on a fucking frozen
hellhole.
Frozen boat in the middle of fucking Antarctica.
Yeah. But yeah, so them being in this city is very much how you said, like Prometheus, like when they go into the room with the statue. And it's one thing that I like that movie so much for, because I think a lot of people shit on that movie. I fucking love that movie.
No, it's a good movie. I liked it.
And I'm so excited for this new one. But I love that part. The whole opening, like middle of that movie and of this is just like, let's check out this place and what's the mystery of it.
Sure.
Just the drive of that mystery.
It's a very simple story.
Yeah.
All you want to do, you want to find out what the fuck is going on in this place that no one's ever been to.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
The one thing I struggle with is when they're in the city, the only way they can really tell a story is they're literally just basically like reading cave paintings.
Yeah. I remember that.
And even in the book, I'm like, that seems like a little lame. They do improve it a little bit in the movie, though, because as they're exploring the city, they basically find like the center of the city.
Right.
It's like, this is where the time dilation is coming from. There's some power source there that's causing it. And he touches like a control console or something, and he basically gets a flash of their history.
Right.
And to me, that was like a kind of an improvement on the story, because it's like, it is kind of like a cheap trick we've seen in a lot of movies before, but it works.
Yeah.
And it's done really well, and I like that idea of he's just flooded with all this knowledge now.
So in the book, they're basically reading hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is as such in the script as well.
Right. Yeah. But
he gets more information once he interacts with that console.
And I think it is interesting to bring up that when they are going through the city and they stumble, I don't know if they're going into buildings, but they stumbled into this room that had basically skeletons of all life.
Yeah. So it's heavily implied that, I mean, and this is what he says, is basically these winged cucumber-like creatures, the ancient ones, they came to Earth and they created life.
Right.
And it's implied that they created us. And again, similar to Prometheus, they're going there and the engineers, they created us. Except they're humanoid in their own appearance.
Right, and then out of boredom, the old ones gave us pride, greed, all these other things just to see us fucking tear each other apart.
Yeah. Which becomes one of my favorite moments is when Lake comes face to... or no, it's... Who's the really religious one? I think I have a note of
Atwood?
that. Yeah, Atwood. My favorite scene. So eventually Lake gets absorbed by a
I know where you're going with this. Yeah, I enjoyed it too.
Yeah. The scene where Atwood... this is a little later. We still got some more to cover. But Atwood, it's like kind of towards the part where they're trying to escape. And he's like, "Oh, I need to go grab something." And he's basically going back for his Bible.
Right.
And the scene where a Shoggoth appears as Lake and is talking to Atwood, basically taunting him.
Yep.
And like, you hold on to that Bible and your beliefs and everything. And he's just like, we created you and we gave you all this. And he's basically just laughing in his face at
him. While Atwood is reciting prayers, I guess.
Yeah. And it's by far my favorite moment in the script.
It's very... There's a lot of very cool scenes that go on in the movie. Yeah.
And just like the dialogue in that moment, like he's really ripping this guy's beliefs to shreds.
Yeah. And the guy, I imagine he's crying, basically looking at someone, a colleague of his that he now knows is some kind of fucking demon monster inside of him. So, I mean, that's got to be some terrifying shit.
Yeah, and I just love that scene. But jumping back a little bit, so while they're in the city, Dyer is with a team on their base camp. And this is where shit kind of starts to go bad in a different way, because they're checking out some of the ancient ones that they pulled out of the sarcophaguses, and they start to come back alive because they're not being sedated anymore.
What else would they be doing, huh?
Yeah. And this is one of the scenes that I think is kind of a little ridiculous. So while those things are coming alive, they start killing people. The Shoggoth version of Gunnarsson has been... this is confusing me because they describe his skin as being white and translucent, but nobody ever seems to mention it. So I can't tell if he's like that all the time or maybe it shifts like that. And because they like basically put him in the medical wing, like, oh, he's hurt and let's put him in there.
Right.
And then he just starts absorbing everybody and killing everybody. And I love the idea. So Dyer's hanging out with one of the other guys. I can't remember which one. And they're like checking out the examination room, and then all of a sudden Dyer can't find his buddy, and he goes in, and the ancient ones are awake, and they're basically dissecting him on a table.
Yep.
Which I thought was a little ridiculous.
No, I for some reason I just see it perfectly clear. I mean, it's terrifying. Yeah, just giant fucking tentacle monsters ripping your buddy apart.
I love the idea of him being ripped apart, but the way it's described, it's almost like they stopped to have a scientific examination.
Yeah.
Like, why right then and there?
Yeah, that is, you have a point there. I mean, there's a lot of shit going on. Like, and you got humans who you haven't seen in forever.
Yeah. Like,
now's the time.
And it's like, why are they dissecting them if they created them? They already know all about them,
Yeah, maybe.
It's just the way it's described. Maybe that's not the way it was intended.
No, absolutely. I got
It's basically like they have him. I think the literal dialogue is they have him on a table performing an autopsy of their own.
I remember that.
Yeah, which them ripping him open is great. And I also like the scene because there's a scene where they describe, and it's the first kind of scene where they hint at like some real horror in the script, because this happens a little earlier than some of the other stuff we mentioned. Is I think it's Dyer's, or maybe it's the guy they rip open. He's like, they show that like he's in a room, and behind him on the autopsy tables are all these like dead, supposedly ancient ones. And then it's like a scene where he moves and the camera's supposed to move with him, I guess. And then when we come back, they're all standing up behind him, and he doesn't know.
It feels like Independence Day, basically, where the finger is moving. Yeah. And then at least everyone's fucked.
As cheesy as a lot of these moments could be, I think they're all written really well. And like you said, you can visualize it. It really bounces off the page.
Again, the imagery is fucking awesome. This is a lot of fun to read. I mean, I had a lot of fun reading Batman Year One, and because I enjoy the Batman. Yeah. But something that I've never read about before or really knew the history of for this H.P. Lovecraft, this was fucking amazing. The script is just a lot of fun to read, and it's a quick read. So
yeah, it's only like 108 pages, which is pretty average for a script length. But like this movie seems like something that could be a big blockbuster. I don't know if it'd be a summer movie. It feels more like an October movie, but I was surprised at how quick it moved.
Yeah,
like as much as it builds up in the beginning, it's not like boring build up.
Right,
like, all the characters are really interesting. They're all really well written. And yeah, this is, like I said, this is the best script I've read for the show, I think.
No, I agree.
And I love how they have a way to fight them, because they know that the salt hurts them. Because when Larson dove into the water and the Shoggoth tried to get him, it like melted from the water.
Right,
basically.
it tried to throw its tentacle in there, and then it pulled out.
They have all these shotguns, and because they're they need hunting. And so,
how many would you say he's got? Like maybe
they make
8,
it sound
9?
Like he's strapped with like at least 10.
Yeah, here's one for your hand, 2 for your back, and just make sure it's filled with fucking salt.
Like, it reminded me of one of those old PC games like Doom, where you're like your dudes, you have 9 weapons.
There's no way I could carry so many weapons.
You just picture a guy carrying a chainsaw, minigun, and rocket launcher at the same time.
Totally.
They literally described him as he's just strapped with chainsaws.
Right. And he's cutting down his shotguns to make them sawed-offs.
Like, I'm sorry, you can saw them off all you want. You're still carrying like 10 guns. But yeah, so they start. He puts salt in the bullets, which is brilliant. Like, Like and even when he was like, they were describing the scene, I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And then he shot one. I'm like, oh yeah, the salt hurts them.
Where did they get the salt?
I assume it's just something they had.
Okay.
I mean, it's.
Salt breaks down ice anyway, so I assume they had a fuck ton.
I don't think they really they say he went back I forgot one scene that is really fun. So after the dude was like filleted on the table, Dyer starts running away, and the Ancient Ones chase him, and he runs right into the Shoggoth, and the Shoggoth and the Ancient Ones, mortal enemies, they see each other and they start attacking each other.
Yeah, when I read that part. And, he's frightened, sees his buddy on the slab, and he starts running. I was blown away by the fact that they said that Shoggoths are flying through the air. They're now, there are people's faces that are fused into these, I don't know, these fucking purple blob monsters.
Yeah.
Just screaming as it's just insanity is happening as he's running through, I assume, just white, snow everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, people are just fighting each other.
And like, as confusing as something like a amorphous blob monster could be, they managed to make it pretty comprehensible. And like so carrying on with the Shoggoth after so Dyer and Larson end up escaping into a cave, and that's where he's loading up on the guns with the salt and everything. And they're basically like, we need to get some rest. And
Larson's been in there for a while.
Yeah, he said while everything was going on, he went back to one of the other ships and got some supplies.
Right, after he swam out of the frozen fucking water.
No idea how he didn't get
right. And he's fine. He's in an ice cave now.
Yeah,
perfectly fucking warm.
Yeah, no,
it's amazing.
There's no wind in here, so we're good.
I tell you, the men of the 20s and 30s, these were real men.
We got nothing on them. But yeah, so as this going on, the other plane is coming back.
Right.
And they don't know what's been going on. So because they've been up there, they have no communication. And so I love the scene where they land and Gunnarsson just comes out to meet them, and it's just this fucking blob monster just swarms this plane.
Yeah.
And is just taking these guys one by one.
No, going on about that scene was Gunnarsson. What he split himself into maybe 15 different guys,
like 15 different
Gunnarssons, right? 15 clones of himself, and these guys are in.
They seemed like kind of like not.
Oh yeah, there's Gunnarsson. Well, I know that guy. Bring him over closer. Yeah. And then when they realize that there's 15 fucking clones that are now getting closer to the windows, this scene was incredible. Really scared the shit out of me when one of the Gunnarssons presses his face up into the window, and they all start like laughing at the same time with this high pitched fucking like alien laugh. Incredible! It was awesome.
I just love the way the monsters like taunt the humans.
It felt a lot like in The Thing where they were about to kill the one guy with the flamethrowers, and he opens up his mouth and he makes that one insane noise. That's what it kind of felt like to me. Except these guys are smiling and they're fucking. They're very what am I looking for here? They're very just insane looking, I guess, for lack of a better word.
It's basically just like being swarmed by crazy people who happen to be morphing blob monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you ever see the remake of the thing, or like the remake prequel?
With the girl?
Yeah.
I saw. Yeah, I saw it. I guess it wasn't too memorable. Beyond that,
I haven't seen it. I kind of want to check it out.
It's all right. I mean, I remember I read you the possible remake of the thing.
Yeah, or no, the sequel. Like
it was a sequel, and it was
one.
It was what, maybe like 15 pages.
It was just like a treatment
for it. So not great.
And not at all like the original.
Right? Yeah, nothing like that. But
it wasn't like some other alien came down and is like
tried to help out McCready.
Yeah.
It was. I don't think it'll get made, but
no,
stay away from that one.
But yeah, so this at this point it kind of becomes an action movie, and this is like they just start like gunning down Shoggoths as they're trying to get away.
Right.
I'm trying to remember because they end up on the boat, and I'm trying to remember how they end up on the boat.
Well, let's see what they tried to put charges down in the crevasses.
Oh, okay, yeah. So they get on the boat and they get the TNT, and they only have like so much of it
because of the time that's gone by.
Yeah, because the thing is, they think the monsters are going to fix the boat and take that back to the mainland, and then it's fucking game over, human race.
Right.
So their idea is they're gonna. It's on like a shifting plate, and they're gonna line that what's it called, the fault line,
right,
with TNT and blow it, and then basically trap them there.
Yeah. And
I do love the scene. So it's basically at this point it's Atwood, Larson, Dyer, and like one other guy I think, and like as this is going on, all those guys basically get killed except for Dyer, because one of them ends up getting turned into a Shoggoth, I think, and it almost seemed like they kind of knew he was, but they're like, we're just going to roll with it for a minute. Or maybe I was reading that wrong, but it definitely seemed like they had an idea that Atwood was a Shoggoth.
Yeah, I thought, you know what, you're right about that because
because it was after
he had the conversation with Lake, and Lake's not going to just let him fucking go without assimilating with him.
And they said that there was a gunshot, but you don't know the resolution to that gunshot.
And then Atwood
comes out, and he's like, yeah, I just had to get my Bible.
Did we see Lake after?
No, we never saw Lake.
So he killed Lake potentially?
Potentially, or Lake got to him, and that Shoggoth just never kind of reappeared. Okay. Yeah, it's not really made clear, but I mean, I guess it is made clear because he is one later. Like once they before they go to blow the TNT, he tried to interferes, and Larson basically like sacrifices him, like, or I guess he doesn't because he ends up on the boat. This part got a little muddy for me.
Yeah.
Basically, then they end up blowing out the dynamite.
Right.
And at this point, I just have a note that says, "Man, this script is awesome." And then, I fucking love the way this ends so much. I will say, in the original script, or in the original book, story, Cthulhu does not appear.
Okay.
But in this, you straight up they blow up the plate, the ship comes loose, they get onto the ship, and they're like kind of leaving, and then Cthulhu just rises
Yeah,
out,
I remember that shit.
Fucking reaches down, and he's like a giant, reaches down and grabs the ship and just hurls it.
Yeah, well, no, he didn't he break it in half like an egg or something?
I think he kind of crushes it as he grabs it. Okay, is the situation, and then hurls the chunk that they're in, and then it literally plays into the beginning,
right?
Like because the ship's all fucked up, it drifts into the water, and then but they're playing it from Dyer's point of view this time. Because the opening of the script is from the sailor's point of view. They open this door, this crazy guy kills one of these sailors with an axe to the chest, but in this at the end, it's from Dyer's point of view, and he's like, there's monsters beating on the other side of the door, and they open the door, and he assumes they're Shoggoths, and he kills the guy.
Right.
And it's like cut to black because he gets knocked out or whatever.
Right.
And it's fucking awesome.
No, it's pretty sweet the way it was definitely laid out for you there. Then they had him. They came back after Cthulhu throws him into the ocean. I guess out of the time portal area that they were stuck in. So he throws them out of there, and while he's actually cracking them, all of his little homies are falling into the water and just dying, disintegrating. So, he's a god. He doesn't really give a shit.
No,
so.
And I want to say in the Cthulhu mythos that, like, a lot, like, I think the ancient ones were at war with Cthulhu. Like, see, that's the thing. It doesn't make sense for Cthulhu to actually appear in the script. I think it's just something thrown in because, hey, we're doing a script that's touching on the Cthulhu mythos.
Yeah, if it's HP, we got to have it in there. Yeah.
Which they talk about seeing a statue of him in the city.
Yeah, 100-foot tall statue that they all worship.
From what I understand, Cthulhu is basically in this underwater city, like, hibernating. And he reaches out to people mentally, and he creates the cult of Cthulhu because he's, like, influencing people through their dreams. And I mean, this is like 3 different stories I'm talking about now.
No, I've actually no, not now that you mentioned that, I actually recently watched another movie that was based on the Cthulhu mythos, but
there are quite a few adaptations.
It was fucking brutal. It was Dragon.
Yeah, Dagon. Yeah, that was one that was inspired by one of his stories.
Yeah,
there is actually
crap.
So there's actually in 2005, they made a silent film, and they filmed it just like they would film a silent film in the 20s, called The Call of Cthulhu, based on the story The Call of Cthulhu, which is about the cult of Cthulhu.
Right.
And yeah, apparently it's very good. I haven't seen it, but it apparently reviewed very well.
It was made in what year?
2005.
Okay.
And they made a straight up silent movie that it looks like a movie from the 20s. Like, they used filmmaking techniques to mimic the look of a 20s movie.
Well, I'd love to check it out.
And yeah, there's also a movie just called Cthulhu that has, I don't even know. It's kind of unrelated.
No, I hear you.
It is based.
So, I mean, listen, Lovecraft, ever since he died, he's become extremely popular.
Yes.
So, I mean,
for a dark, twisted man.
Yeah. His a lot of his stuff is pretty amazing, but like we said, it's not easy to read.
No, it's definitely something that, like, I like reading the summaries of it, something that can give me more information. Like, I'd love to be able to go and read all these, but it's hard to find the time and the patience.
No, I hear you.
So we do have a little tag at the end of the script here, and this is something in the story that is a little. So throughout the script, at 3 different points, I think it is, Dyer's having dreams about this dark man. And they just refer to him as the Dark Man, and so he's telling this story to this other guy. I can't remember his name, but he's
basically the guy at the end.
Yeah,
he's some kind of captain.
Yeah, he's just like some ship captain guy, and he's the one that is telling the story to.
Right. He is going to be going off to Antarctica,
and Dyer's trying to tell him, "Don't go there. This is what happened to us," which is how the setup of the story is. It's Dyer. I think he's writing a letter or something to a newspaper or something, just trying to get out, like, "Hey, this is what happened to us in Antarctica. Don't go there." And this takes it in a little more extreme territory, because by putting him in a mental institution and all that. But and it ends with like, "Oh yeah, fuck it, that guy's crazy. We're gonna go anyway."
Oh no, he says that you killed everyone on your crew.
He's just like, "Oh, you went crazy and you killed them all."
I don't need a fucking reason to fucking lock you up, dude.
Yeah.
And so, unfortunately for Dyer, he's safe in a mental institution now.
But I mean, as they're approaching Antarctica, they say that he killed himself.
Oh yeah. He was he hung himself.
Yeah, he hung himself, which is something that was not in the original thing.
Okay.
So in the original thing, because in this he escapes with Larson, but Larson is basically infected.
Okay.
And he kills him in the ship, like in their half of the ship that Cthulhu hushed across the ocean.
That's just floating.
And so in the original script, they escaped. I think it was Dyer and Larson looked back at the city as they were escaping, and he saw something. They never tell you what he saw, but they say he went crazy afterwards. And
he saw it?
Yeah, and like he saw something so horrific that he just he just went insane.
Now, this is in the book.
Yes, this is in the story.
Okay.
Because in the script, Larson is killed by Dyer when they get there. He's like, "I'm going to become one of them. Like, I want to die on my own terms," basically. So throughout the script, Dyer is plagued by the dreams of this dark man. And I assume that's what this dark man is supposed to be. I don't know if the script is implying that he's like a manifestation of Cthulhu. Maybe, like I said, through the dream. Actually, now that I'm saying that out loud, it's probably through Cthulhu's dreams or the way he communicates with people. So maybe that was some influence from Cthulhu.
Yeah.
But at the end of the script, this captain guy, they go to Antarctica, they find their base camp, and it's all destroyed.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, all of his crew just disappears. And I love the way this is written, because it's literally just like in a second. It's almost dreamlike.
Yeah.
It's like he sees the camp, and then basically he turns around, and all of his men are gone and dead or whatever. And then there's just this hooded man that just like approaches him, and it just like the movie ends. It's
a great closing. It feels good to know that not too many movies let evil win at the end. So I really enjoy
definitely
that.
A theme with H.P. Lovecraft. It's always about the rising of evil. And I mean, it's like, are we really the true evil? That's also a thing that often gets kicked around a little bit.
Well, I'll tell you this. Again, I mean, you've heard it 100 times. This script kicked a lot of ass.
I wanted to read this script because like the last script we did, it was unknown. We were interested by the Ares script.
Right.
We were interested by the premise and overall was surprised by something we knew nothing about. This I at least had an idea about, but I had no idea I was going to enjoy it this much.
Yeah. I knew a lot about Cthulhu and just the mythos and whatever goes with that, but and
I knew this story in particular. It's my favorite. I've actually read most of this one.
Yeah.
I do want to go back and finish it.
Well, definitely.
But I want to see this movie made so bad.
Yeah, it sounds pretty badass.
Yeah.
As long as the CG feels believable.
Yeah.
If they could throw in some practical effects as well.
I think they could get away with a lot of practical effects in this movie. I mean, obviously you would probably need some CG assistance.
Of course.
But I think you could, like with like the tentacles and things like that, but I think you could do a lot of the ancient ones with some good practical effects mixed with CG.
Especially it being Guillermo Del Toro. The man's incredible when it comes to his costumes and his designs. So I would definitely feel comfortable putting this story in his hands.
Absolutely. And from what I understand, this is his passion project. It's something he's tried to get, which to me is another bummer if it never happens.
Yeah.
I really hope it does. But another interesting thing is, so he's known for keeping journals of his movies and stuff, and you can go back and see like, oh, here's some sketches he did for Pan's Labyrinth and stuff. There are sketches and things for
I've seen a couple things,
yeah, and that's really cool that he put those out. I want to see this movie so bad. That's really all. That's like all I can say about it.
How do you feel? General public would view the movie?
I think it would do really well if released at the right time.
Okay.
I think that would be the tricky part. Like, I think the gut would be like, oh, it's a horror movie. Release it around Halloween. But I think it could do better maybe like November, December-ish. I think it would be successful. I'm assuming you would need at least $100 million budget for something like this.
Okay.
I don't think it would be gangbusters just because, for one, a lot of his movies haven't made a lot of money. Like, I think they've done pretty well for themselves.
Sure.
I'm trying to think of.
Well, I mean, we got ourselves Hellboy and Pacific Rim. I'm pretty sure is fucking killing it internationally.
I remember Pacific Rim was kind of a disappointment. Like, I think it made money, but it didn't make a lot of money.
Okay.
Like, I think it barely crossed its budget or something like that. Maybe. I don't know what Pan's Labyrinth did. I assume that movie.
I assume it was also lower on the scale. Because
I never saw Pan's Labyrinth.
Oh, that's an amazing movie.
Yeah, I've owned it. I've been sitting on a copy of it for a very long time.
No excuses.
I have none. I really should watch that. And I'm not a huge Hellboy fan. I know people really like those movies. Sure. I heard the second one was better. I haven't seen the second one.
They're both great.
The first one did not blow me away.
Again, with Guillermo, it's always set design, costumes, creations. Just the creatures are always fucking incredible. Yeah.
Okay, Pan's Labyrinth did really fucking well. It made $83 million on a $19 million budget. So.
Okay, and then you ready for Pacific Rim?
Yeah, let's.
Pacific Rim's budget was $190 million. Its box office was $411 million.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, so it fucking crushed it.
I definitely think that was more of a worldwide box office.
Oh, totally.
Like you said.
No, yeah.
And that's the problem with Hollywood is like, oh, it didn't make that much in the States, so we shouldn't make another one. And they've been struggling to get the sequel made, but I guess they're filming it right now.
Well, I tell you, Hollywood is kind of going down where China is slowly moving up.
Yeah,
because I know they're building their own fucking Hollywood over there. With
I mean, they're the second biggest market next to us. So.
Sure, yeah. And I'm pretty sure they could throw a lot more money at movies nowadays.
Yeah.
A little bit more propaganda, but hey, that's not my thing. But I don't know. In closing, I thought this movie would be awesome. The script kicked ass. The characters were a lot of fun to read about, and the monsters were very different. This is a very different looking movie than you're gonna come across.
Yeah, it's a fantastic adaptation. Like, I would maybe change like one or two little things.
Sure,
I think
little stuff.
But yeah, make it slightly more horrific. But yeah, very minor. Things. Like, I could see this. Like, if this draft got made as it was, I'd be okay with it. Like, I would definitely walk out being like, oh, it could have been a little better, but I really enjoyed that movie. Kind of like Prometheus. Could have been a little better, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, little things, you're not going to have yourself 100% movie over there, but
which I will say, the original script for Prometheus, which will come out when Alien Covenant comes out on this show, is a much better movie.
Okay.
I know a lot of people are interested in that one, so I don't know who's gonna. You guys are all gonna have to fight for whoever wants to do that one. But because I know Vinny and Nick both wanted. I know you were interested in that one too.
Yeah, no, I'll let Vinny and maybe I've overstayed my welcome.
Oh no,
here.
You're one of my favorite guests
all
to
right.
have on, Eric.
Well, thank you.
But no, I will say that original script is a much better movie.
Okay,
and it's really good.
Cool.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to say on the script? I mean, I highly implore people, go to our blog and read it if you haven't. It's so good.
Yeah.
And like you said, a quick read.
It's a quick read. It's a lot of fun. And I have a feeling that as you're reading it, you're just going to be sitting there like, get the fuck out of here. No way. Oh, my God. Just sitting here being blown away by what you're actually reading.
Yeah. Like the last half of the script, it's really hard to put down.
Yeah.
Just such good imagery, and just the way it visualizes off the page is amazing. But all right, man. Thanks for sitting with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again.
No problem. And I'm glad you could read this one with me.
Oh, yeah.
I knew this one was going to be a lot of fun to talk to.
It was a good time.
Talk about. I had a lot of fun talking about this one.
Cool. So, thanks a lot, man.
And don't forget, everybody, you can follow our show on Twitter at Shelved Podcast. You can email us at shelvedfilmpodcast@gmail.com. And we have the script on our Tumblr if you want to go pull it off there, shelvedfilmpodcast.tumblr.com. And don't forget to subscribe and rate and review the show on iTunes, because we will read those reviews on the mini episode. All right. But all right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Eric, thanks
guys.